back-chested burrows, as the name suggests. They are crepuscular, meaning that they're most active during the morning and in the evening. They're around the same size as an American robin, so they're about 13 to 22 centimeters tall. You can think of them kind of as a pop pan on stilts. They weigh around 150 grams. They don't display sexual dimorphism, which is just a fancy term to say that the males and females are around the same size and color. However, during the breeding season, you can see here, our male is a little bit lighter, and it's actually quite interesting because they spend less time in their burrows during the breeding season. They become bleached by the sun, and that's why our females are a little bit darker here, and our males are a little bit lighter. Aha! Figuring out the remote. So, burrowing owls rely on an open grassland habitat. They don't actually build their own burrows. They use inactive burrows of small mammals like prairie dogs, ground squirrels, foxes, badgers, marmots, skunks. They can also nest in artificial nest burrows. Not in Canada, but in the States, they also use old burrows and tortoises. You can tell a burrowing owl nest from a regular ground squirrel or prairie dog burrow because they decorate their burrows with prey items. Here, some songbird feathers, it's probably good like a corn lard. They also decorate it with coyote scat, and then here you can see all of this crumpled up bison and cattle manure. Burrowing owls have a higher tolerance to CO2 than other birds because they live below the ground. So burrowing owls don't just have one nest burrow. They have one burrow that they nest in, and then they can have several other burrows that they use. We call them roost burrows for the burrows that they use when they're hunting and need a spot to hide away from predators. There's also burrows that they use to cache prey items when they have an abundance of prey that they've caught. Say one day mice catching's really good, they'll stash their prey in that burrow for later, and then at times when they can't find as much food, they'll go to that burrow and use it to feed their nestlings or to feed themselves. So, burrowing owls are predators. They have a large variety of things that they eat here in Saskatchewan. They will eat small mammals like mice and wolves, insects like grasshoppers and crickets, amphibians like frogs and salamanders, and also songbirds. Small mammals make up most of the diet in mass of the food here in Saskatchewan, but insects make up more of the quantity of their diet. In this photo, we see a displayed leopard frog that was on one of the burrows, as well as some burrowing owls bringing home some bowls to their nestlings. It's theorized that burrowing owls decorate their burrows with the bison and cattle manure to attract insects, to hide their scent from predators, and even as some sort of sexual selection where they'll decorate their burrows to attract a mate. Forgive me for going too fast, I have a tendency of doing that. Not only are burrowing owls predators, but they're also prey species for other animals. So some of the predators of burrowing owls would be badgers, coyotes, foxes, snakes, skunks, hawks, falcons, and other owls. Not only will some of these species prey on the adult burrowing owls, but also on the eggs of owls within the burrow and on little nestlings. So they have a few techniques to try to avoid predators other than just hopping down into their burrows. At the bottom here we can see a burrowing owl doing a defense display where they try to make themselves look really big, and then they'll make a hissing noise, a screeching noise. This burrowing owl is doing its best to defend from the innocuous prairie dog who is not much of a threat but still is coming onto its territory there. Another defense mechanism is called mobbing, where the burrowing owl adults will come down and fly at whatever's trying to attack their nestlings in the nest. So in this video that I will play in a second here, there is an American badger and two burrowing owl adults who come down and attack the badger. What's interesting about this video is not only the parents from this nest are attacking the badger, but the parents from a nearby nest also came to help attack this badger. Keep our community safe. I just kidding. In the video, which is not super working right at the moment, but you can hear them, they're also screeching as they come down and bombard this badger. So in the video, there's one standing guard over here, one flies by, bombards it, and a second one comes. Burrowing owls can also mimic the noise that a rattlesnake makes with their rattle in their tail. This is a video of Artemis, our rescue burrowing owl, who broke their ulna in 2015 and was taken to the Burrowing Owl Center in Ustra, and she is quite angry when staff will put her in this carrier for her own good. You know, it's funny, because we did just test this and it didn't work. But now all you lovely folks are watching and it's like, no. Monica, do you want to do your best impression of a rattlesnake? Oh, there she goes. How was that? That was good? Yes. Oh, one more. Definitely. Obviously, she's a little bit more defensive because she does have a broken ulna, and we did stick her in a box. So, life cycle of burrowing owl. So, burrowing owls live around 3 to 4 years in the wild. Artemis lived to be about 10 years old in captivity. Lack of predators helps out a lot. Burrowing owls return to Saskatchewan at late April, early May, and they will actually breed in their first year upon arrival. So after they select their nests in late April, early May, the females will lay 5 to 14 eggs with an average around 9 in Canada. And then those youngs will develop in the burrow, and they'll leave the burrow around 14 days old, and that will be in June. This is a photo from an artificial nest box. So their entrance would be along the side, and there would be like a tube sticking out of the ground where the burrow entrance is. This would be a spot above ground where researchers can open up and look at the development of the burrowing owls without super disturbing them every once in a while, just checking. And this is how we learned about the development of burrowing owls. It was also used as a way to increase the amount of burrows in an area, so it would help increase habitat. In July, the owls then learn to hunt and fly around, and at 45 days old, they become less dependent on their nest burrow site, and we consider them fledged. It's just a fancy term that we use for birds for leaving the nest. They do go back and forth between the nests, it's just at 45 days old, they become less dependent on that nest area. In August, they spend their time doing a training montage where they're fueling up and learning how to fly for migration. In September, at around the 26th of September, they start to fly south to Texas and Mexico. Only around 58% of juveniles actually survive the period between fledging and migration. So the mortality rate is at about 42%, which is pretty sad. In November, they arrive at their wintering grounds. So our burrowing owls are within the range of burrowing owls that actually do migrate. There are other subspecies of burrowing owls from different locations like South America that don't migrate. They stay all year round. But ours are pretty cool that they do migrate. They travel 2,500 to 3,500 kilometers to southern Texas and central Mexico. And like I said, they arrive at their wintering grounds in November. So these burrowing owls will fly 100 to 300 kilometers a night, which is crazy. They are found all across northern and South America. Burrowing owls in Canada are currently breeding in Saskatchewan. Giving you a little sneak peek. They currently breed in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and the southern interior of British Columbia, which I had no idea. They occupy only about half the area they once occupied in the 1970s, and less than 1/3 of the area they occupied from 1880 to 1950. In BC, burrowing owls. Sorry, you just stepped up again. They were extirpated as a breeding species in the 1980s, and the few breeding pairs that they do have there today were the result of continuous reintroductions. So population supplementation, adding new members of the species out there. Only one pair has been confirmed breeding in Manitoba since 1999, and no documented nests were found in Manitoba in 2004. That's kind of like the last numbers we have in the official reports. However, there's lots more research that needs to be done on that. You can see here that we're basically in Val Marie, we're in the central area of their breeding range in Canada, so we're in a really cool spot. Burrowing owls were listed endangered under the Species at Risk Act in 2003, and its status was reconfirmed as endangered in 2006. It's still on there. By the Committee on Status of Wildlife in Canada, that's what COSIWIC stands for. And that was largely due to significant population declines. On the Species at Risk Act report, it claims that the number one reason for decline is habitat loss. So conversion of grasslands to croplands and use of by humans. That's basically not ranch land. We love ranch land. So what do we do at the park for burrowing owls? We have a burrowing owl monitoring program where we go out every year on our prairie dog colonies at the same spot. We set up scopes and we do behavioral nest searching for burrowing owls. We basically look for mating pairs and find their nest burrows. We then follow up with those breeding pairs in July, where we put out trail cameras and do brood counts, which just means counting their babies. We put out these trail cameras as it causes less disturbance to the burrowing owls, where we need very close-up images of the owlets to be able to tell how old they are. This is a photo of us out this year doing brood counts. And this is one of the banded burrowing owls that we found this year. See, this is an image of one of us looking through the scope, and that's kind of how we found the burrowing owls. You see them out going into their burrows from kilometers away, and you have to try to direct people to where you think that burrow is, because there's lots of burrows on the prairie dog colonies. And now I want to shift gears and let Annika tell you a story about how one of our invasive plant projects actually helped directly ended up benefiting the burrowing owls this year in a super unexpected way.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'm Annika. I work mostly with invasive plants in Grasslands National Park. We're going to go on a bit of a detour, but I want you to kind of keep in mind how burrowing owls select their habitat and where they like to nest. It's going to come and connect at the end. So like I said, I work with invasive plants in the park. One of the main species I work with is leafy spurge, Euphorbia rurata. It's a highly invasive noxious weed found in Saskatchewan. The province of Saskatchewan mandates that if you find this invasive, you are legally obligated to control it. In the park, we would control it anyways because it outcompetes native vegetation, inhibits the growth of other plants, and is toxic to many animals, including cattle. So it will form dense monoculture colonies that degrade native habitat and are extremely hard to control once they establish. A population was found in Grasslands National Park that has been quite difficult to control due to the presence of dense snowberry. Oh, wrong button. Where's the beaks? Yeah. So dense snowberry along an area in Forest Creek tributary in the East Block. So this is snowberry here, and it's kind of hard to tell, but these tiny plants right here are leafy spurge. And you can see how small they are when they start off compared to the snowberry, as well as here, this is a spurge plant amongst all this dense vegetation. So it can be really hard to find these plants when they're small, when we're trying to find them and control them. And it can also be difficult to control them because we're applying herbicide. And in order to effectively control leafy spurge, you want to get even coverage of your herbicide, and that's really hard to do when you have dense snowberry, especially when you're someone like me who's walking through it in your protective equipment and a backpack and it's up to here or here on you. It's really hard to get to. So Grasslands National Park, as part of the park management plan, conducted a prescribed fire in the park in the fall of 2024. Fire is an intrinsic part of the mixed grass ecosystem and an essential process that maintains ecosystem integrity. The objective of the 2024 burn was to apply prescribed fire to an area inside of the East Block, so up here, that had been affected by leafy spurge, which was our target invasive species. While the fire was not expected to kill leafy spurge, the intent of the burn was to remove surrounding vegetation to make it easier to access and find the spurge in the area and apply herbicide. So this facilitated a more effective control of the population. So the leafy spurge sites were well known, and so we decided to burn to get rid of our snowberry. So in October of 2024, we safely and effectively completed a prescribed burn to the assigned area of 26 hectares to control the leafy spurge. And down here, you can see us doing like a spot burn. This is me looking super professional in my banana suit. And then this is an overall picture of the area we burned. And here I have a video that was taken with a drone. This is done internally to monitor the fire and to use infrared to see hot spots. Here you can see Parks Canada fire management personnel lighting the fire, and also they're on the edge containing the burn. And if you look down here, you can see where you have the dense snowberry. It's a slightly different color, and that's along the creek tributary where it's really hard to find spurge and where it's most dense. So these photos here show the before and after of the area of the prescribed burn. The top photo was taken in 2024 before the burn, and the bottom two were taken in May of 2025. Up here you can see how dense the snowberry is, and these blue flags here represent two leafy spurge plants that if I didn't have them flagged out at the time, you might not even know the spurge was there. And it really shows how if you didn't know leafy spurge was present, it would be almost impossible to find. We're really getting up close and shoving bushes apart looking for these plants. So in 2025, it's really interesting to see how well it burnt and how much easier it is to see plants coming up that might have once been covered by snowberry. Another thing that's quite interesting is in this photo here, we're setting up cameras to monitor the revegetation after the burn. So again, 2024 post-burn, we have the 26 hectares are visible right here. You can see it all burnt. And this photo here was taken immediately after. You can see the woody remains of the snowberry. There's not much left, which is great. And then in 2025, we have a regrowth. So fire rejuvenates prairie plant communities, and prescribed burns help maintain the fire regime. Grasslands National Park has an average fire return interval of about 25 years, so by burning, we reset that and make it, the plants get stronger and come back better. So here we have silver sage regrowth, and you can see how well it came back after we burnt it to the crisp. It's coming back nice and lovely. This photo here, you can see the scorched snowberry, and all these bright green plants are actually all leafy spurge. So they're a lot more visible, which makes it a lot easier for me to kill them. Oh, didn't even know you could zoom in. Nice. And then we also had a mystery guest here. So again, I have two photos of similar areas. The top one, again, is from 2024, before the burn, and the bottom one is from 2025, after the burn. The top one has blue and red flags, which represent our areas which all have leafy spurge. So you can see all the flags and how they're, I think, our tallest flags, and how they just barely stick out of the grass. And then at the bottom, we used yellow flags. They're a lot more visible. You can see how much shorter the vegetation is, how much greener it is compared to the surrounding area. Another thing to notice in this photo is how there are quite a few lumps here. And these are actually Richardson ground squirrel burrows that became more visible after the burn. And there's quite a few. There's one here, here, over here. So it was surprising to see these appear. They might have existed amongst this grass, who knows? But they were definitely more visible after the burn. So after the burn, there was new growth and shorter vegetation. We saw plants we normally wouldn't see, and shrubs were a lot shorter. This meant that in May, my crew and I noticed that when we came out, there was a lot more Richardson ground squirrel activity and a lot more lumps on the landscape, aka burrows. So by having shorter vegetation, a lot more burrows that we're noticing, you add those two together and you get prime nesting area for burrowing owls. Basically, we knew burrowing owls were in the area, but we hadn't historically seen them at this exact site. So they came in, went, wow, look at this wonderful area, and moved right in. So you can imagine my surprise when I'm walking around looking for leafy spurge, and I come across burrowing owl nests here. And this is a prime example. You can see you've got the burrow, and then you've got the manure displayed around it, and then we'd also see feathers or small rodents and insects. And it's really interesting because, as Darryn mentioned, burrowing owls move into inactive burrows. So for all we know, these were there to begin with, but they were just covered by the vegetation before. Yes, and then obviously because we found these burrowing owls, we had to do a little bit of shift in our operations to minimize our disturbance of their nesting sites, because I can't be stomping around right on top of it. So we just kind of let them be.
In the spurge?
No, actually, most of them weren't immediately in our spurge patches, which was really nice. They were clever while picking their spots. So, in summary, burrowing owls rely on grasslands habitat. They nest in areas with abandoned small mammal burrows, example prairie dogs or ground squirrels. And Grasslands National Park is in the center of their breeding range in Canada. prescribed burn for leafy spurge management unintentionally created a habitat for missing burrowing owls, which is a really good reminder to us that grasslands, ecosystems, everything is connected. A burn we set out to fight invasive species ended up supporting a species at risk, and we went in with one goal, but we saw these ripple effects that benefited the broader ecosystem, which was really interesting. Questions?